So welcome back to the Women in Data Takeover stage for our last event and speaker of day one of Big Data London 2022. I've known this lady a very long time in the world of data, and I can say you're in for a real treat. Kinnari's going to be sharing her story and what's your inner compass. Welcome, Kinnari.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Yeah, great. So it's a great privilege being here. You heard Robin, you heard Tess and Sinead earlier, just talking about their journey. And I suppose my journey is going to be slightly different, but we cover up a lot of the same synergies as well. And it's such a privilege to represent Women in Data. About 5 years ago, I was at a Women in Data event, looking up at the speakers and thinking to myself, if I could be there one day speaking for Women in Data, and I'm here 5 years on. So for me, it's like a pinch me moment right now. So I think for me, it's talking about what I've learned and how I've used my inner compass to guide me through my journey throughout my career. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. So firstly, a little bit about me. So my career spans over 20 years. At a young, early on age, I realised I was really good at maths. So obviously, evidently, it was quite natural for me to go and do computing and maths at university. Today, I'm the Chief Data Officer at IG Loyalty. IG Loyalty, not many of you will have heard of them. So they're part of the international airline group who own airlines like BA, Aer Lingus, Iberia and Welling. And we're one of the operating companies. We work in the loyalty space. So you may know us very kind of famously for the Avios currency, but we also offer loyalty products and services to our partners as well. We have over 35 million customers globally, and we work with over 100 partners in the travel, retail and finance space. We have about 450 people in the organisation, and this is my little plug for kind of trying to recruit people. We're in growth mode right now. I have doubled my team in the last year by double, and we're looking for everything from data engineers, data scientists to analysts, and we're significantly growing in the organisation. Like everybody else, we're going through a transformation right now, so that's my last plug. And on the far left, so a mum of two. I was going to put mum of two brats, sometimes angels. Life does feel like you're spinning plates, professionally and personally as well. And we're all trying to find our own balancing act. And it's quite hard sometimes, it's not easy. Some days you get it right at home and some days you get it right at work. But, what I want to put out there is there's also another side of me as well as a Chief Data Officer. So I want to share a formula with you. For me, this is something I use both professionally and personally in my life. And the first thing is about commitment. Commitment to start something, whether that's start to exercise, whether that's to learn something new, or it's to make a change. I think we have to think about what that commitment is. And then more importantly than that is also consistency. So actually, can you finish it and see the results of it? And these are two things that I've always applied throughout my career. Commitment was consistency, because I think that's my formula that I've used to succeed when I've come across challenges in my career. And this is something that I want you to think about when you listen to my talk today, about how you can apply that in the ways you think about your values. So when's the last time you thought about your values and what are they? So today I'm going to talk about my values and how I've used that as my inner compass to guide me throughout my career, how I've faced those challenges and how I've overcome those as well. So first one, ambition. Have you thought about what you really want to achieve? Have you stood back and take a step? Have you really understood what your goal is? And that could be both work and professional life as well. But have you just kind of taken a step back? Do you enjoy what you do today? And do you know what your ambition is? For me, I think it's also being vocal about it. We heard earlier from some of the speakers that you've got to be vocal about what you want. People don't know what your ambition is. And for me, the reason why I've got a picture of a sweet shop over there. So when I was at the age of 5, I'm oldest of 3, my parents bought a sweet shop. Every 5-year-old's dream, obviously. So it's a family business. And when I turned 16, I always knew I wanted to earn my own money. So I went and got a job at a shoe shop, much to my dad's dismay. Why would you go and work for a shoe shop when you've got a business of your own? And it's because I had the ambition to go and be independent. I mean, it was the best decision I made in my life. It opened up so many opportunities for me. But more than anything, it started to build that personal confidence in myself. I think moving on from when I was at school and college, I started taking subjects that I really enjoyed. When I went to university, I already knew that I wanted to move away from home. I was in a class full of 30 students, and I did computing and maths at college. and majority of those were men. That didn't faze me because I loved what I did. I went on to university and moved away, and I was only one of 30 students that actually left home to go to university. Now, of course, I was scared, I was fearful the night before, but the ambition of wanting to do that sort of drove me. So I think it's really important to understand whatever your ambition is and to use that as your strength to move forward. And I think I remember early on in my career, there was a magazine, and it was the top 10 companies to work for. And on there was dunnhumby, and I'm thinking, oh, I'd like to work there one day. And again, without me realising, I made that a goal of myself to kind of work in that organisation. I wasn't sure how I was going to get there, but I do remember that saying for myself, I want to be there. And it's something that I did, and I did eventually, you'll see on the next slide, made it to work on to dunnhumby. So I think, have a think about what it is you want as ambitions and goals, and just sit back and write them down. So passion, I think this is really important. We've heard Robin talk about passion as well, about what kind of led her through some of the challenges she had. And I think passion is really important. It also helps you to keep learning, new opportunities open up. It helps you kind of succeed in what you really want to do. And I think it helps you to kind of drive what you enjoy and really face into that. For me, as you can see, in the last 20 years, I've worked for a variety of organisations. But one thing was for sure for me was I was really passionate about the data and analytics industry. Early on in my career, I was impacted by a reorg, and I remember not getting the role that I applied for. I had to reapply for my role. And the hiring director made a comment to me to say, well, I think you should take a sideways step. I think you should go and work for commercial or marketing. And I remember thinking to myself, but that's not what I really want to do. So then I decided, I'm not going to take that role. I'm going to go and seek other opportunities. So I think just remember what you enjoy doing and stick to those. And I think every time I've sort of moved on throughout my career, it's because I've actually probably want to learn something new, or I think I felt bored. So that was a real good example for me where, and some of those colleagues didn't move on, stayed there. But I think what happened to me was I realised there's more opportunities for me once you realise what it is you really want. I think for me, at a point when I had children, it came to a point where I had to make a really tough decision. I worked for a really good organisation. I had my first child, and I realised that the balance has to change. I couldn't work for that organisation anymore, mainly because it didn't really work for flexibility for me. So I made the decision to leave the organisation whilst on maternity leave and go find a new opportunity. Now, that was quite hard, especially when you've been out of work for so long, to do that. But I think it gave me the confidence to go and find something that actually worked for my life. So whichever situation you're in, I think it's down to you to make the right choices. You're not stuck anywhere. The opportunities are there. You have to go and grab them for yourself. And what I did by doing that was moving on to a different role. And that also meant that I got a promotion into a role that was much more senior that I probably wouldn't have got if I stayed where I was. I think you should always stay true to yourself and believe in what you want. And another example that I came across was when I was in an organisation. Again, we were bought out by a big organisation, and I was told that there was a role for me, but it wasn't the role that I wanted to do. I remember having the conversation with the CEO to tell him I'm leaving, and he was very shocked to understand why I was leaving. And I explained to him that I fully appreciate you've carved out a role for me, but it's not what I really want to do. He didn't quite understand why I was doing this because he felt obviously he'd given me an opportunity, but I said it wasn't for me. I mean, the good thing about that was I built a network, I built some great relationships, and he actually said to me, if it doesn't work out, Kinnari, you can come back. And for me, that was an amazing kind of network to have, and to have that behind you, knowing that you might go somewhere and might be the wrong decision, was a really big eye-opener for me. So I think that's really important to keep that at the back of your mind. So courage, for me, this is like the secret ingredient to help you act despite your fears. And we talk about it in different ways, but I think courage is really important. You don't have to have it all figured out. I remember taking on my first director role. Yes, of course, I was petrified. I was taking on another team. It was a team of data engineers and data scientists. I didn't work in data engineering field, data scientist field. How was I going to manage these teams? I remember thinking to myself, it's fine. I'll read up on things. I'll understand the team. I spoke to my network. I understood how other organisations were doing it. And actually, if you've got an open mind and a growth mindset, you very quickly realise that actually you can learn a lot of stuff that you don't know about it. So one of those things I think is important is don't have to have it all figured out, and think about that. One of the other examples was I got promoted to senior leadership team. and it was my first senior leadership team. I didn't quite know how to be a leader amongst, and it was a leadership team full of men. And I remember seeking out a mentor that was a woman in leadership. She didn't work in data, and I just wanted to talk to her. And it's something that I did myself, realizing that maybe this is the time that I think I need a mentor. And it was great because I was able to openly talk to her about some of the concerns and fears that I had, or some of the challenges that I was facing and how to address them. So that was a really good eye-opener for me, but also gave me the courage to bring that forward. Sometimes, and we talked about earlier in some of the talks, that you've got to be brave, lean in. When there's a conversation taking place, if you've got a question, ask it. If you have an opinion, make it. You know, you're no smaller than anybody else there. Everyone's opinions are valid. You may have the least amount of knowledge, it's absolutely fine. You might give your own perspective on it. And that's why it's quite important to have people from all different backgrounds in your team. Think about when you hire people, you get different opinions, different perspectives on things. So your opinion does mean something, just don't hold back on what you say. And I think the other thing is try something new. It's really important, push yourself on that courage. So you might see an example there of Windsor Castle. This was me doing a 10K as part of a triathlon early this year. I'm not a runner, I'm a complete novice. But as a team at work, we decided to do a triathlon. So I'd be doing the 10K run. Now, it comes back to the commitment and consistency. I decided to do a 10, 12-week training program, and I continued doing that, getting up at 5:30, going for a run. Isn't something I've done before, but what I realised was actually what I could achieve if I gave commitment to something and consistency. And I did finish it, although I was sweating, in 1 hour, 6 minutes, but it just goes to show that it's something that I would never have done before. I was up against people that had done triathlons before. I was up against people that were quite athletic, but it was a team culture, and it was really interesting for me to show where my courage was in that space. A good example I've got as well is when I came back from maternity leave, second time, 10 years ago, I went back to my existing organisation and I asked them to work from home. Now, that everyone does it now, but back then, really no one was doing it. I asked for not 1, but 2 days working from home. I didn't know what the answer was going to be. And I remember the director at the time said to me, yes. And I was like, okay, don't mind which days, Mondays and Fridays. I couldn't believe what I'd been offered because I already had plans in my head that I'd go part-time. That's fantastic. It meant that I had the flexibility to make my work life work in terms of personal and professionally. But then on the other side, I started to hear comments from people around the team, so when do you work? You're not in the office because you're not visible because everybody was in the office. So you're going to always have negative people saying things. And I think that's fine. As long as you believe in what you do it. But if I didn't ask, I didn't have the courage to ask for that, I don't think I would have been able to. I probably would have left and gone somewhere else, or I probably would have just asked for part-time. So I think you don't know what the answer is until you ask, and keep that at the back of your mind. The other story I want to tell you about is I work for an organisation. You can see I'm not telling any names. They're all there. There's some people in the audience here as well. It was a team full of 2 men and me, and I remember the 2 male colleagues were picked for an opportunity to go abroad, and I wasn't. I found out, I wasn't happy. And I thought, what do I do about this? Do I ignore it, just be angry about it? Or do I go up to the CEOs and tell them what I think? And I used to, at the time, get in quite early. And I remember they'd be in the room, there'd be nobody there. I'm going to use that as my opportunity. And I remember going in, knocking on the door, and I said, Tom and Peter, made up names. Tom and Peter have got the opportunity to go to Singapore. Why was I overlooked for that? They came up with an answer that didn't really make sense, because they've been here longer. So yeah, but if you think about my experience, I've worked longer in this field. They just didn't have anything valid for a reason to not. Next time we do it, Kinnari, we'll make sure you go next. I think it just, for me, that broke everything, because there wasn't that openness with me, that trust. They could have explained what they were doing beforehand, and rather than just doing it and then realising. But also, ambition came into that. I had to sit there and say, I'm really ambitious. I want to be there. I want to learn. And that's great to know, Kinnari, but I don't think they really did. So I think sometimes we've got to be vocal. Maybe they didn't, and next time they would have picked that, but they were too late. I'd left by then. But I think it's quite important to have the courage to go up and challenge your directors. When you think you're being sidelined or you're not picked for the opportunity, it's interesting to make sure that you challenge back to your director. It might feel uncomfortable. It's absolutely fine to kind of understand you're showing and you're being vocal to whoever you work with. The last one, I'll explain why I've got a picture of myself in a minute, is self-belief. I think we've all got to recognise our strengths. When's the last time you sat down and wrote down everything you achieved in the last 6 months, in the last 10 years, in the last year? It's a good exercise to do. Write down everything you achieved, and actually, you've achieved that. Yes, you work with teams to do that, but actually, there's a lot of stuff that you've done yourself, and it's a really important exercise to do. I think success doesn't happen by chance. It's important to remember that. How many times have we thought that person's better than me? Quite a few times, part of the imposter syndrome, and self-criticism seeps into that. I think everyone is an equal grounding. No one's better than anybody. We sort of make that up in our own head. And I think self-belief is a really critical value that we should all be thinking about and valuing. I think once you've got that and you've got to use it as a powerful motivator, you start building your self-brand, you start putting yourself into situations and you start promoting what you do. And that's sort of what I suppose happened to me. I started my career as a hands-on practitioner, and I realised halfway through my career that I was good at leading people. So I started to take opportunities that meant that I could start managing a lot of practitioners. Then I realised I wanted to become even more senior. So I started to carve out those opportunities that gave me those roles. When I was in an organisation and I asked them what I wanted and wasn't quite there, I sought out those opportunities myself. So I think the gift is within you to make sure you find those opportunities. The other thing I think is you've got to really also learn to be assertive, because you know your stuff. You've worked in this field a very long time. Sometimes you may be the only data person in that room and around that table, and it's absolutely fine because you're the subject matter expertise in this. So it's important to remember to say no, to challenge back, because you know your subject area and you know what's right. So I think don't doubt yourself so much in that. Remember the self-belief. And the photo is a reminder for me of how far I've come. So at school, I was quite a shy girl and quite quiet. I know you might think not right now, but that was me. And one of the things that I wanted to do, probably around 10 years ago, I started to attend some conferences to start networking. And I'd see people on stage and think, I could do a better job than that person. And I sort of put that as an ambition of mine to do something. But I didn't have the confidence to stand up in front of an audience and talk. So I started small. I started going to conferences, started with subjects that I really knew. And this was a test in itself, because when Roisin said, come up and talk about you, I was like, me? I could talk about tech all day long, but if it's about me, I think you've got to push yourself out there. So this is, for me, shows everything of the values I've talked about: ambition, courage, self-belief, and the passion sort of comes through in this picture for me. And I think it just shows to me where I was 10 years ago, where I thought I couldn't quite do that, to where I am today. It's a good reflection of that. And I think it's something that we should all think about. What is that thing that in self-belief, and how can you do that around that? I'm just going to finish off with my values. I've shared you what I've talked about, what's helped me succeed and overcome in my career. I've talked about ambition, passion, courage, and self-belief. I want you to think about what your values are. I want you to fill this in and think about, they may be the same ones, they may be different. But if you do one thing today, I want you to think of one value for yourself and think about the commitment and the consistency that you're going to bring, and do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kinnari. I think what I heard there, above all, is actually a real pioneer. You were often the first to do things in the organizations that you were working for. And if it didn't work and it was broken, you moved on. You created slipstreams for other people behind you, which is phenomenal. And we thank you for that. Thank you. Have we got any questions for Kinnari? Hello.
So Kinnari, it's very clear that you are spinning a lot of plates. You've got a very busy work life, you've got a very busy home life. When you go home, how do you leave work at work and not bring it into your home life?
Very good question. I think you've got to find those boundaries. If you don't have that boundary, there was a really good quote, don't give your whole self to work and nothing to your personal life. You've got to create those boundaries and those restrictions. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be an email in your inbox that can wait. I think you've got to commit to giving time to your family or to yourself, whatever that is. And I think COVID has made us realise how important that is for those that weren't doing that. So for me, I do come home, switch off, the phone's there, and if I need to pick it up later on because I think it's important to me and it's something I want to do, I will do. If I send a message at 10 o'clock, I don't expect my team to do that. So I think I create those boundaries within those professional and personal life. Of course, sometimes they creep in, but I think you've got to be a little bit more stricter to yourself to try and find that balance.
Thanks, Kinnari. Any more questions? Coming round. Good luck, Annika Rice.
Hi, I just wondered if you had any advice. I'm kind of going from that kind of people manager into that kind of leadership role at the minute, and just any advice on that kind of transition, how you found that.
Yeah, so the fact that you've taken the opportunity is fantastic. I think you've got to take the leap. You won't know everything, and that's absolutely fine. You do your best. I think you've taken that role because you probably part of you knows you can do it. I think have an open mindset, and you'll start really realizing what your leadership qualities are. Think about what leadership qualities you want to portray as a leader now. Every leader is different. I'm a different leader, so are you. And I think there's not one shape of a leader. There may be some qualities that are important to you, empathy, direction. In other areas, there's different leadership traits, as you see, not all at the same time. So I think for me is have that open mindset and think about how you want to be a leader. Think about the managers that you've had, who have been the good ones, who have been the bad ones. Learn from the ones that were bad and learn from the good ones. And then you very quickly realise that you've got your own leadership style. There's no mistake. You're not going to get things wrong. You're going to learn from managing that team and have that open dialogue, I'd say, and trust and openness with your team, because that will go a very long way.
Thanks, Kinnari. We've got another question. Two more.
Hi, Kinnari. What's next?
Oh, that's a big question. What's next? So I joined as this Chief Data Officer role is my first Chief Data Officer role at IG Loyalty, and it's the first Chief Data Officer role that they've hired for as well. It's a huge role, I won't lie. It was a vertical and horizontal kind of step up for me. So I'm learning something every day. I'm not finished learning. I'm learning something about the business. And I think that's going to keep me going. As long as I'm learning and I feel like I'm getting the opportunity to apply that, that's going to keep me going. I don't know. I mean, things change so quickly. If you came to a conference like this 10 years ago, there'd be half the companies here. So I think, I don't know, it's all of those things we have to go. I've worked consultancy, agency and client side, but I think that the space is changing really quickly around this space. And for me, I think it's other things that I do in parallel, like supporting women in data, all those things that I'm trying to promote women into this area, really sort of gives me that parallel universe to what I do today. So I don't know, watch this space.
Hi, Kinnari. Thank you for a great talk. I was interested when you mentioned that 5 years ago you saw people up on the stage and you thought, I'd love to be there myself. What is it that helped you increase your self-belief and confidence to be able to do that? Did something change, or how did you develop that confidence?
It took me time to develop that, don't get me wrong. I remember my first conference, sitting there, palms sweating, heart going at 100 miles per hour, thinking, how am I going to do this? And as the time went on, every minute felt like, and I think I put myself in that situation to see how I did, the first talk I did. And if it was really horrible and I hated it, I would never do it again. That's what I said to myself. At the end of that talk, I finished it, but missed a few things out nobody really knew. And at the end of it, the feedback that I got from the people that attended is what drove me, the positive feedback. And that just kind of elevated me. And I realised I've got a great buzz from being on stage and talking about things that I know. And it made me realise, actually, I probably know a lot more than half the people on the stage that were there before me. So I think that self-confidence grew. The more I did it, that confidence grew even more. And remember, I've been doing this for the last 10 years. So if you ask me, in my very first role, getting up and speaking in front of a team, I wouldn't have done it because that self-belief wasn't on there. So I'd say try something small, see how you feel, and then you automatically will grow from that. Go seek out those opportunities.
And put your hand up from Women in Data. We'll always find you opportunities for public speaking, I can assure you. Kinnari, I've got a question, actually. And you mentioned there about 5 years ago and you'd seen a WID stage and it was inspiring. What else has WID taught you over the journey of the last 5 years?
I surprisingly openly admit this, didn't know Women in Data existed until 5 years ago. Obviously, I've worked in this industry. I just didn't know there's an organisation like this. And I think the community is great for me because it really helps us inspire the next generation. We are struggling to get talent in this business. And I think the networks that I've built with the WID community, the different types of people who come across, we all face the same challenges, but to have a community like WID to be able to openly discuss whether it's issues in team issues or whether it's strategic issues that you're dealing with, but centered around women in data, I think you're sort of taking away, not HR's role, but you're taking it onto yourself to start promoting what it means women in data. Now, the HR function's got a much bigger role to play. They won't have the energy and time to just focus on data. I completely get that, but we've got to take it upon ourselves. And I think partnering with women in data, when I first partnered in my organisation, it opened up a huge interest from the existing employees. I didn't realise we were missing something until we implemented it when I worked at the previous organisation. So for me, I think it's a network. I think it's the knowledge you understand and the people you speak to.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kinnari. We're going to be moving back to the Women in Data stand for a group shot. So if anyone would like to join us, to come and join in the community shot for a picture, that would be great. I have one call to action. Come and be a member. Male and female, we need allies in the room. We need our partners in the room, but we need more women in the room. So please register. It's www.womenindata.co.uk. Thank you.